welcome to Renewable Energy, Africa Renewable Energy eSummit. We are very, very thankful to each and every one of you for making it out. We had our first day yesterday and it was such a dynamic group of people, and we thank you so much all for participating. Today, we are happy to be here again to share so much knowledge, gather knowledge, and to basically try to mobilize our resources, connect with our partners, and also try to strengthen capacity. And we will be showcasing a lot of amazing success stories. Before I go on, I would like to also just take a very brief moment to acknowledge once again what is happening on the continent, in one of our largest country on the continent, Nigeria. We know these are very difficult times. If we could just take a very brief moment of silence for those who've lost their lives. May they all rest in peace. Thank you. So before we start today, I would like to take a brief moment to welcome the Chairman Board of Trustees, Fatoumata Coker, just to say a few words, and then we will start the summit. Fatoumata, to you.
Hello everybody. Again, so excited to be here. Yesterday was a very dynamic, amazing day. We had some great lesson learned and some information for those of us that are really working hard to make things happen on the continent. So it was very insightful. Thanks to all of our participants. I actually really want to also thank our sponsors and the volunteers behind the scene that has brought all of this together for us. We have been able to engage across the world, just from the different interests that we've seen, all the way from New Zealand, Australia, all the way to California. We've just seen so much interest and support in making the renewable story happen on the continent. So we here at ReEnergy Africa really are thankful. So I'm going to call out some of our sponsors. IFC, Rec Center, we've got DMD Consulting, PwC, AfroInvest, Credit Registry, which is the pioneer credit registry bureau in Nigeria. We have GE, we have Numnas, we have PowerGen, Bloomfield, TREELION, Foundation Chambers, awesome supporter, the University, American University in Cairo, AFC, Sun Connect and Solar Sister, just so many. I mean, there's so many. Please take a look at them, and we'll be showing some of our sponsors as we go through today. Also, much thanks to our dynamic Master of Ceremony, Ms. Stephanie Kokereng, that comes to us by way of DMD Consultant. She is a partner there, and this is a leading boutique executive search firm focused on emerging markets, and they work anywhere between DFIs and private investors and the energy sector as well. So please check them out. Amazing stuff they're doing. And also Stephanie is the co-founder of the Sustainable Development Goal, one of the Sustainable Development Goal, which is to educate, and it's called Sustainable Planet. 2020. So Stephanie, really thank you for volunteering your time over the last 2 days to be with us. We appreciate it. Also, last but not the least, Lex 360 advisory firm has come up to power this event for us. So we're very, very grateful and thankful for their expertise in making this happen. And of course, all of our speakers and panelists that are on. So I just wanted to take this moment to say really a big thank you to everyone in helping us drive our goal and our mission, which is to electrify the continent by 2030. We're looking for access to affordable, sustainable, and reliable energy, but also clean. And I will turn it back to Stephanie. And during the course of the day, we will hear from multiple success stories and solutions and things that are actually happening. So this is about just accelerating some of the great things that are already happening on the continent. Thank you again, and welcome to day 2 of the ReEnergy Africa eSummit 2020.
Thank you, Fatimata. Thank you. Yes, so we are going to start with one of the first success stories for today, and I would like to introduce Caitlin Hughes, Executive Director, Solar Cookers International.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to the entire Renewable Energy Africa team for organizing this conference and for inviting Solar Cookers International to speak and be a part of this event. I do also want to express my condolences and say that my heart is with the people of Nigeria. Definitely thinking of you. I also want to say thank you to my fellow panelists. It's definitely an honor to be with you today. And thank you to all of the panelists and speakers yesterday. It was definitely a very engaging session. So yes, thank you for this kind introduction. So I am the Executive Director of Solar Cookers International. And I'd like to start off by having a little engagement opportunity, since it is different time zones all around the world. Maybe just a show of hands, or if somebody wants to put any notes in the chat, who knows what a solar cooker is? All right, and next question, who has used a solar cooker? All right, wonderful. And next question, who has access to a solar cooker? All right, so in my overview today, I'm going to explain what a solar cooker is for those who might not know, although I'm assuming a lot of people do know. We'll talk about how they work. We'll talk about who Solar Cookers International is, how we work, and we'll share a success story from Kakuma Refugee Camp in Kenya. So what is a solar cooker? It's a device that collects and absorbs direct sunlight and retains heat to cook food and pasteurize water. There are hundreds of different types, and Solar Cookers International encourages people to use a solar cooker that is a good fit for themselves and their area and their community. Here are a few examples. So we've got the reflective panel. That's a general type. One specific example is the Cook It, which Solar Cookers International designed by request of the United Nations, because they wanted something that could be made easily and affordably anywhere around the world. That works very similar to a slow cooker or a crock pot in terms of things that you'd want to cook, cooking times and temperatures. We have box ovens, which work very much like an oven. There's parabolics, which work very well for frying foods at those hotter temperatures. Also, there are evacuated tubes. As you can see, this picture was taken by my colleague in New York in the snow, so designed to work in colder temperatures. There are institutional scale solar cooking. So this was actually taken in India, where they have steam systems set up on rooftops, for example, that can cook for thousands of people at a time, which is quite impressive on the scale. There's also Fresnel lenses and Fresnel mirrors, which one of our other panelists is going to talk more about later today. So who is Solar Cookers International? We are a nonprofit who's been leading and convening the solar cooking sector since 1987. And our mission is to improve human and environmental health by supporting the expansion of clean and sustainable solar cooking in world regions of greatest need. We are fortunate to work with hundreds of collaborators in over 135 countries. And we work to address the challenge that faces 3 billion billion with a B, so about 40% of the world's population who are still cooking over open fires. And we figure the best way for Solar Cookers International to address this is in 3 ways: through capacity building, advocacy, and research. And I'm going to give some examples of that. So building capacity. Solar Cookers International has been a part of many successful initiatives in Africa. The most recent is in Kakuma refugee camp, where about 700 refugees have been empowered with training and access to solar cooking. I think a really important part of this initiative is that the solar cookers were constructed locally with locally sourced materials, and training was conducted by local experts. So this is a photo of solar cookers being constructed. And we've been working on this project for a few years, which has been neat because we've been able to get feedback from the solar cooks, the end users. And here's some of the feedback that they've shared. It is low in cost, so there's no ongoing fuel expenses, which is great. Solar cookers also help provide food security. And this is important because solar cookers can be used not only to cook food, but also as a solar dryer or a solar dehydrator. So you can add value to food, but you can also preserve it for a longer period of time. Solar cookers can also be used to pasteurize water, which is really important to reduce waterborne diseases, and especially in the times of a pandemic, reduce the number of diseases that one person could potentially be combating at once. More feedback we've received from end users: it's clean and safe, and no fuel is required. So again, when we're thinking about the times of living in a global pandemic, if somebody does not need to go and collect fuel or buy fuel, then that's reducing their risk and their exposure, which is really important. Solar cooks have also said it's easy to use and it's time saving. You can just put your food in your solar cooker, go do whatever else you need to do, come back and check on it. It also reduces the risk of burns, and there's 0 time or danger from collecting fuel. So this reduces the risk from animal attacks or gender-based violence, anything along those lines. Solar cooks have also said there's no smoke, which is true. And this is really important because it improves health. So people don't have to deal with breathing in smoke on a daily basis, which could also increase their respiratory strain and risk for respiratory diseases, again, like COVID-19, but also so many other things. Unfortunately, cooking fire smoke is a huge cause of premature deaths, with about 1 million people dying from pneumonia from cooking fire smoke per year. So we'd like to change that. It also reduces the risk of COVID, as I talked about, in many ways, and there is no air pollution or greenhouse gas emissions. And this is incredibly important as we're all dealing with environmental changes. Even the most simple solar cooker can save one family from burning 1 ton of wood in 1 year. So if we think about that impact scaled on 3 billion people, that's quite significant, both in terms of those people's individual health, but also in our environmental health as a planet. And it's a really accessible solution. So one of the reasons I love solar cooking is it's something that everybody can start doing right away, if you're not already. It doesn't require the huge infrastructure that, say, for example, a dam project might need or something like that. We actually have plans. We have 2 websites, solarcookers.org and solarcooking.org. Solarcooking.org is the world's largest online database of solar cooking information. And you can access plans on how to make your own solar cooker. You can connect with other people involved in solar cooking in your community. You can learn about different types of solar cookers and different ways to use them. It's just a plethora of information. Obviously, solar cooking also reduces deforestation because then people don't have to go and collect wood to burn. And it doesn't require infrastructure, so I like to consider it the people's solution. So here is a testimonial from somebody in Kakuma refugee camp at the Don Bosco training session. So we're going to try listening to it so you can hear from her own words.
With regard to the solar cooker, actually our students have seen the new technology, and majority of them are acknowledging that it is the solution to Kakuma operations. And like for the female ladies, they are like, this one, we must have it. It will help us to kind of reduce us moving up and down to fetch firewood. It will reduce many risks that majority of them, maybe when they go outside there to fetch firewood, they encounter problems You see, we have issues of SGBV and things like that. And if actually this is at home, it will help them reduce all this. By the end of the day, it is clean. We have testified, we have seen the food, we are taking it. I'm going to share with my friends. You see? For me, I think this is the way to go for Kakuma as far as cooking energy is concerned. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you could hear it from her, which is really important.
With the
All right, so I gave you some examples of how Solar Cookers International works to build capacity. And so I'd like to share about the other two main aspects of our work in terms of research and advocacy and how that fits in with what I just showed. Solar Cookers International developed the performance evaluation process, and this is a way to test and measure how powerful different solar cooker models and designs are. Previous to this, it could just be every manufacturer saying, my solar cooker is the best, my solar cooker is the best, my solar cooker is the best. And it would be hard for a consumer or a customer or somebody interested in investing in solar cooking to know from an unbiased source of information, really what to expect in terms of that product. So that's why Solar Cookers International developed the PEP, or Performance Evaluation Process. And one of the things that Solar Cookers International really believes in is that knowledge about solar cooking should really be within each community. We've been trying to decentralize this information as much as possible. Like I said, that world's largest online database of solar cooking information, because with more people having access to this information, that just increases people's ability and access to solar cooking and their likelihood that they'll do it. So one of the ways that we are making sure this knowledge is within different communities around the world is by creating these regional testing centers for solar cooking. So currently, Solar Cookers International has set up testing centers at the Center for Rural Technology in Nepal, in New York in the United States, in California in the United States, and also at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. And this has been really neat because there was actually the conference about the International Organization for Standardization in Nairobi, Kenya, which we were also able to be a part of. So it intersected really well because this test does harmonize with the International Organization for Standardization. We've been a part of those conversations explicitly for those reasons. It provides a single power measure of thermal performance in watts, so it's very easy to compare different types of solar cookers because it standardizes for many different variables, and it brings credibility to the sector and helps you or anyone interested in investing in solar cooking to make informed decisions, which we think is really important for continuing to scale up the solar cooking sector and driving that investment. Some examples of Solar Cookers International and our advocacy work. So we've had consultative status at the United Nations since 1996. And what that means is we have the opportunity to meet with government leaders, for example, at the high-level political forum and discussing progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, or at the United Nations Climate Conference and discussing what each country is doing in order to address that, because it is a global problem. And so we are all working together to find solutions to address that. So this is actually a photo taken with some delegates from Kenya after one of the press conferences, and they were very interested in continuing the conversation. And we had ministers from all different departments, so it was really nice to see that level of engagement and how each one saw that solar cooking is beneficial for their particular area of work. Also, I'd like to give a big congratulations to Kenya because they have recognized solar cooking as a part of their second voluntary national review, which was presented at the high-level political forum in 2020 in evaluating progress and achieving sustainable development goals. So we encourage more countries to include solar cooking in their official policies because we believe it opens even more doors in terms of collaborations and funding and additional opportunities to really make solar cooking accessible to the people who need it most, which is all of us. So one of the things that Solar Cookers International does by leading the sector is working to gather that global data so that we can track our progress as a sector and see what's going on. So this is available on our website, but it's a map of all of the solar cookers that we've been able to identify around the world. And so I would like to give a big congratulations because there are a lot of dots representing a lot of solar cookers throughout Africa. So that should definitely be commended. The bigger the dot, the more solar cookers, which is pretty exciting. So we've been able to identify close to 4 million solar cookers worldwide and counting, directly impacting over 14 million people. And we estimate about 7.5 billion solar cookers, billion meals have been solar cooked worldwide, which is pretty exciting. So this is a global project. And so if you have a solar cooker that's not on this map, we encourage you to add it. There's a very simple form to do so. It's the citizen science. Another thing that we are doing to build on these successes and to encourage more successes is by sharing with people what's been done, but also the potential with solar cooking. And so we've done a country by country analysis of solar cookers and also identifying the number of known solar cookers per country, the percentage of the population that's reliant on solid fuels for cooking, the amount of carbon dioxide emissions prevented, the premature deaths due to household air pollution, but also the potential savings from switching to solar cooking. And so these analyses really looked at the health costs when cooking over open fires or using other things, and also the environmental cost and how that can translate to, both health, environmental, but also economic costs on the household level, but also on the country level. And so these analyses by country were really created to inspire more investment in cooking around the world, because the benefits are on many levels. So how to engage with Solar Cookers International? There are lots of ways, and we welcome you to engage with us. The easiest one, of course, is to sign up for more information. We encourage you to access Solar Cookers International's resources. Like I said, we have 2 websites. So you can look for people who are already solar cooking in your area, which we definitely encourage, because then people can see what works best in their climate and for cooking the types of foods that they like to cook, and also connecting with people who speak the same language always makes things easier. So we work to build that global network of mutual support. We encourage you to join the Solar Cookers International Association, which you can do there. Of course, we encourage you to include solar cooking in your work and your country's official policies. And if you'd like to reach out to SEI, we do offer consultancy services as well. I do want to say a big thank you, because this really is a global movement. This isn't something that any single one of us could do on our own. And that's one of the reasons I love working with solar cooking, is we're able to connect with people all over the world. So the success really comes from our great team of volunteers, our global advisors, our board of directors, our incredible staff team, and really, like I said, the hundreds of collaborators in over 135 countries, so all around the world. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have time, or if people want to reach out to me afterwards, I'd be happy to try and get back to you as well.
Thank you so much, Caitlin Hughes. Thank you. That was absolutely insightful, and I'm sure we'll be having a lot of questions. I have my questions. It's a very exciting, very exciting topic as a whole, and there is a lot of information that I'm sure we need to get from you. What I found most exciting was the fact that people can actually build this, and that there is also a video and training how to do this, which really makes this very, in fact, affordable and accessible even more. So we will take some questions, but as we have started a little bit later, I think what I'll do is we'll put the questions in the question box, and let's see how we can take them from there. So next, I would like to talk about our next success story with Mrs. Urs Regenbach, Chief Operating Officer, Solar Fire Concentration Limited. Mrs. Urs, I'd like to pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for welcoming me here. Really excited to share more on what our company is doing. We're an impact engineering company based on an international team working in the field of solar thermal energy. And today, I think it's a great opportunity to also look more into thermal energy component, because often we talk about electricity, but we're going to also now have a look at all the different the big potential in applying solar thermal, especially in the entrepreneurial sector. So I will just share my screen here. Here we go. Okay, I hope that's coming through to everyone. So I'm going to look at what are the reasons we went on this journey to essentially re-engineer and adapt solar thermal energy to the context of entrepreneurs. As you know, and I think we've already spoken a bit to this, a big part of the energy consumption in Africa, in African countries, is in the form of biomass, firewood, agricultural residue, a lot of charcoal being burned, both at a large industrial scale, but also a very large market in charcoal and firewood that people are using, on a daily basis to do everything they need to live, to cook, but also to run businesses such as bakeries, roasteries, and what we saw before, also at the industrial scale. So when we started, we asked ourselves, what does the energy landscape look like, in Africa, and big threats like deforestation, climate change, but also poverty, became apparent. And in the end, it occurred to us that, if you want to tackle any one of these problems, if you want to get rid of poverty, you can't, do that by burning down all the trees. So quickly we started focusing on how can we replace, the fuel, how can we replace the wood that's daily being burnt with something that does not require wood, that can be completely renewable. And this is something you can see, happening across, much of the world, and to give people a chance to really break out, we have to make renewable energies cheaper than charcoal, cheaper than firewood, and we have to also look at, where are the big consumers of firewood, and look at how we can tackle also the small scale to industrial scales at which the fuel is being burned, the wood is being burned. So this is what brought us to LiveFire. It's a long story, but I will focus now more on sort of the considerations we had to develop this scale of the technology. You can see in the bottom a few examples of the different applications. In the back, you can see the reflective surfaces which bring the energy together, and then in the front you can see different types of applications. So one of the primary considerations in what can really replace a large amount of the charcoal and biomass consumption is entrepreneurship, right? Because when you create a job where people are using the solar energy profitably, where they're taking the free solar energy and transforming it into value, into money, then it can be rapidly scalable. And so we started to look at, what does it take for people to generate local value, to get ahead with the solar energy? Because if you just put, a solar oven somewhere, and people are not taking that energy and doing something economic with it, the energy just disappears, right? It's what we've also discussed with microgrids earlier on in the conference, that if you don't use the electricity, it will just evaporate. And it's the same thing with solar thermal. You have to have a productive use for the energy. Then we also looked at multi-use, right? So that we're able to not just do cooking or baking, but that we're able to power, a broad range of thermal operations. So you can see also in the bottom right, a larger system for steam generation, where there's also a really large potential in powering engines, powering desalination, heating and cooling, different types of applications. But then as an impact engineering company with a very impact-oriented team, we zoomed in on, what is the minimum viable solution that, drives an economic gain for the entrepreneurs that right now are burning charcoal, right? And so we actually had to consider the scalability issue from a different point of view, and look at our large systems and ask ourselves, what's the right scale for, a small scale entrepreneur? And we actually had to scale it down from these, say 32 square meter solar concentrators down to the smaller LiveFire 5 units. Here you have another example in France, where the issue is a bit different, where we're running a solar bakery. And here we have an 11 square meter solar concentrator. So we essentially, we can build essentially any size module, and then for larger uses, we can channel them or link them up. But the problem of the entrepreneur in Africa is, that is really around the effective use. So for what we do in Africa, we found the 7 square meter size to be really useful to run a small scale business operation. This is an example from the Amazon, but similar types of dehydrators, roasters, and ovens we have in use in East Africa, in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and also in West Africa now with Burkina Faso, where we just opened up a bakery a few weeks ago. And we'll talk more about that. Another important consideration is, and we've heard this also before, you have to be able to maintain the technology locally. If you import stuff and it breaks, people need to be able to fix it. And even better, you should just fabricate it locally. And this is also what we do. We're fabricating now in Burkina Faso and in Kenya, and so we're able to cater to these markets. And then this is maybe the most important part. As an engineering company, we really care about solving the thermal need people have. So there are a bunch of solar cookers out there which reach kind of low temperatures, so forces people to change their recipe and adapt a bit. But that's not our vision. So when we go in and we look at a thermal requirement, for example, when we started to work in Kenya with the entrepreneurs there, we looked at their 45-minute bake cycle. We looked at the tray size, and in the end we have exactly the same 45 minutes baking experience, but with solar energy. So because of the scalability, we were able to adapt and really provide the power that's needed to really solve the customer's needs. Want to just highlight that as an engineering company, we do a lot of services in the solar thermal field, also for other companies that need modeling and feasibility studies on this matter. But then we channel this expertise, and because the team is really impact focused, try to make it have the biggest impact. And this is clearly at the entrepreneurial scale. And so here you can see we're working in a lot of different places. Our team is also really spread out. There's also new dots we should be adding in Haiti. Just now we started a new project with a client there. And so we're really at this stage, and I think I'll get to that, really at the point where the technology is really proven. We can really see the impact it has on the entrepreneurs in terms of the money they're saving, but also with the carbon and reduction in deforestation. So then it comes to the question: how do you do this? How do you develop new technology and then bring it to new places? And this is where GoSol comes in. So since 2016, with the GoSol brand, we've really put this entrepreneurial education first. Projects where we're able to not just go to existing entrepreneurs and replace their existing charcoal or fuel consumption with solar, but also looking at if you really want to scale this, right? And we're looking at extremely high rates of youth unemployment and jobs that need to be created to really create a green growth and have Africa develop in a way that it can develop differently than the West, which is still largely dependent on fossil fuels. And if we're really trying to make a green growth happen, we need to train and get new people involved. And so this is where then GoSol came in, where we started to work with NGO clients and NGO partners and other partners in the field to create new entrepreneurs. So you can see there's still the first phase where a lot of R&D is needed, piloting is needed to find out what are the best solutions in the given market. So in some markets, people like muffins more. There's the higher end stuff which needs more training, like more birthday cakes, etc. And there's the sort of the mass product, the bread. There's different things that can be done in every market, right? Other places which do a lot of roasting. We have a really good experience in peanut roasting, which is a great value-adding process. If you can do that in solar and people can sell that, then you have an exciting model that you could train people on. And so then we follow through with basically our education pathway to then educate, incubate, and scale. And I'll talk quickly on that. So the training aspect is really giving the basic skills in solar thermal energy to maintain the technology, which is really exciting because we don't have imports to make the technology, so everything is maintainable at the local level as well. Here you can see also the basic training in doing the baking itself, the making of the dough. Then people go out, right? They do marketing outreach. They start to build business connections. So very quickly they bring back money, right? And this is really exciting example here in Uganda, where we trained with Plan International, a group of young people to run their own bakeries. And I think on day 10 of the training, that's when they went out to sell all the bread they made, and they brought back money. And it was really like a foundational moment for this group of people to notice, okay, this could really be a job, right? Here I could really make money. And the advantage they have, of course, is that they're not paying anything for wood, charcoal, and fuel. And so they're able to decide if they just want to have a higher margin on every bread they sell, or if they want to, sell the bread at a lower price. In some projects, we're also able to do new things, put in place what already works, but also explore new options. So here we're looking at solar charcoal, which is not the end goal, right? We don't want to burn trees more efficiently, but where the reality is charcoal is used a lot already, and we're able to use the solar energy to make an essentially loss-free process of making charcoal, because we're not burning any of the wood to create it. And so in some projects, we're also able to push the boundaries of what's possible, because every time we enable a new application for the entrepreneurs, they can diversify their business. Here you can see also the fabrication and maintenance training people can get. So they're able to maintain the technology essentially indefinitely. Here you have the incubation aspect. So a lot of what we do post-training is set up business connections, looking at the supply chain, to make sure that the entrepreneurs can really just stay focused on the baking as much as possible, and they do not need to do everything else required to get the business off the ground. So the more we can do for them, the better supply chain that we can put in place, the more stable we can make the demand for them, the easier it is for them to be successful. And so here we're always working in partnership with our clients and local partners to make sure the entrepreneurs have a great outcome. Here you can see an image of a solar bakery we just opened up with our client Remar in Burkina Faso. So you can see the really exciting moments from the training, where they're doing lots and lots of baking with the live fire oven. So before I say bye and thank you, here's an image of me in Switzerland. It's where I'm calling from at the moment, where I sometimes enjoy also a solar-powered sauna, which is a really exciting experience. So before I say thanks to everyone, I wanted to quickly highlight some of the ways in which you can interact with us. So the first point, which I mentioned with GoSol, is we're running a lot of projects where we are training people and we are creating entrepreneurs. And so if you're an organization who cares about impact, we're happy to work together to create new entrepreneurs. In other places where we're already further along, and there's a lot of visibility of the product in the market, we're moving into commercialization, where there's lots of interesting partnerships in the microfinance sector and distribution sector. So if you're interested on that level, we're also really happy to engage. Investments is another key step. So the right investments from the right investor at the right time can make a big difference. And so we're really focused on investors that share the mission of keeping a focus on the African continent and what the entrepreneurs in Africa need. And so investors who care about that, we're definitely really excited to engage with them as well. And lastly, but not least, I was really excited to also join this conference and share a bit about our work, because we find that because we're basically the only ones focusing on entrepreneurial use of solar thermal energy, there's very low awareness of what this could do. And so I'm really happy to have been able to share with you on this. Here we go. Yes, so thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your attention, and then I'll be really happy to follow up with any questions as well.
Thank you so much, Urs Regenbach, Chief Operating Officer, Solar Fire Concentration Limited. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Please, if anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and they will be also, speakers will be answering that live. So please feel free to drop your questions. They're important. I believe we had one question in the box also from Caitlin's presentation. So let's definitely also look at that. As success story number 3, I'd like to call on Olasimbo Sojiri, Country Director, Solar Sister, Nigeria. Olasimbo, please welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to be able to speak today. Of course, I'm going to start with acknowledging what's happening in Nigeria. Our hearts go out to the families, to people who have been injured or their lives have been lost in this fight for what is a better country. And so my heart just goes out to everyone there. All right, I'm going to start with describing why it is that we are Solar Sister and what is the background to the nexus between energy and gender, because as you'd have heard in our name, Solar Sister, you can see the solar representing the technology and the sister representing gender. So the origin is actually the lack of energy access, but I'm going to be talking specifically about Nigeria, where more than half of the population lack energy access. But then if you now, if we do kind of like a first disaggregation of that data, you find that in the rural areas, first of all, half of the Nigerian population, which is about 200 million, live in rural areas. But then energy access there drops to as low as about over 30% or something like that. So 1 in 3 people have access to electricity in the rural areas. So let me do a second disaggregation of that data. If you go into the rural areas, you find that 70% of those who live there are women and girls. A lot of times the men have migrated to the urban centers in search of greener pastures, but you find that a lot of these rural areas are populated by women and girls. And so this is a gender issue. If you go into the family income, what is it that people in the rural areas are spending their money on? You find that 30 to 40% of their income is around energy related costs. So purchasing of charcoal, as the last speakers have said, it's really, really prevalent in many parts of Nigeria and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa as well. We know that this is actually a problem that cuts across sub-Saharan Africa. So we find that a lot of the energy, a lot of their income is also going towards energy relating costs. All right, there's a lot of widespread use of biomass, especially for cooking. And we've seen from the last speakers for baking and even for making charcoal, there's a lot of energy that goes into that. Let's also look at how it affects the health or how it affects mortality. The third highest killer of Nigeria is diseases related to indoor air pollution, so pneumonia, diseases that affect the lungs. That is the third highest killer after HIV and malaria. So this is a serious issue. What are we doing at Solar Sister? So if we look at our big audacious goal, what is the big thing that we want to achieve? We want to see a world that is powered by women entrepreneurs. So we have seen that there is that relationship between how the challenge affects women, and we want to flip that over to ensure that women are part of the solution or are the solution to resolving this this huge challenge. So that's our dream, that a lot of the solutions are actually powered by women entrepreneurs. But what are we actually doing? So what we're doing is we're providing a business opportunity and economic opportunity for women that live in underserved communities to be able to distribute a range of clean energy products. We don't just provide the products, we accompany it with training, support, and mentorship, because the goal is to ensure that these women are building and growing successful clean energy businesses. Of course, we provide the technology, ensuring that whichever products that the women are distributing have the necessary quality verification. So for the lighting, which is a range of solar lamps, solar home systems, just solar lamps that can with phone charging capability, we ensure that all these lamps have the IFC Lighting Africa certification. And IFC have already done the due diligence to ensure that these products have gone through the certification to ensure that they are quality. So we ensure that the products that we are distributing have this certification. And then for the clean cooking as well, we're also part of the Clean Cooking Alliance, ensuring that the stoves that we are distributing have also met the necessary standards. And then we give business support. So for every woman who becomes a solar sister, she's matched with a business coach, and that business coach is able to mentor her through the process of becoming a successful clean energy entrepreneur. And of course, we can see that there would be the ripple effects of that. So saving money, clean energy, improved health. We find all these are part of the benefits of becoming an entrepreneur. In 2016, we also did an independent study with our entrepreneurs to see what is the impact of this business. So you started a clean energy business. What is the impact on the life of a woman? And we were able to get to separate the responses into the 6 impacts. So of course, there's income and autonomy. So for every economic opportunity, the more income you make, we found that it's linked to the autonomy of the woman. But we've seen improved business skills as well, improved leadership with the women, improved communication, improved health. A very key one also is the link to education and how the light has the ability for children to be able to study longer, which has a direct implication on their education and improving their education. We've also seen the link to community safety as well. We know that there is a link between illumination and safety and community safety, and we have a number of success stories attesting to how the fact that that family had electricity or had light, they were able to dissuade hoodlums from their houses. So we've seen that as an impact as well. And then another key thing, for every woman who becomes an entrepreneur, she belongs to a sisterhood group. So we are able to leverage on the sisterhood, the peer support that we have for each other, which is needed in starting a business, but also is just needed in coping with all the other things that you have to deal with in an underserved community. So very quickly, I want to put the spotlight on a project that we did, which was one which was specifically targeted at internally displaced women. If you know a bit about Nigeria, you would know that we have several challenges, but one of it is also the one with insurgency in Northeast Nigeria, and that had led to a lot of internal displacement. So we did this humanitarian project to see what happens. You've displaced them, they've resettled in new communities. How do they begin to find their feet? And so it was targeted at 200 women to start clean energy businesses. So yes, I'm going to just show a short video that kind of highlights that.
Sunana Naomi John, na gudo ne daga Goza, na zo Bauchi State a nan. To ni kuma da yara guda 8. Ba mu tare da mai gidana ba. Ya bar mu ya je ya yi aure, ya kuma yana zama da matan shi a wuri, so ya bar mu. Mu ne ni nake zama da ƴaƴan nan. Annan muna fama kuma annan a Bauchi.
we're particularly excited about the web project in Bauchi because it touches on 200 vulnerable internally displaced women who have now started and are running successful clean energy businesses.
Mu dai lokacin da faɗa ya soma tashi gari ya soma rugunsumewa a lokacin da Maiduguri ta hargutse aka fito gefe-gefe ana yi. To a lokacin ne mu sai muka kararrabta muka komo gida yaƙi bai ritsa mu ba an so mai a garin a can ana yi abu bai zo kanmu ba sai muka gudu gida. To bayan mun taho mai gida kuma Allah sai ya masa rasuwa.
Na zo nan Bauchi muna dan lallaba da yara. Muna dan zuwa gona muna samu dan amfani ina ciyar da yara. Yana samu suna ci. Wasu kuma mu dan taimaka musu ta hanyar makaranta. Muna tallafa musu.
The Women Entrepreneurship Project aims at decreasing energy poverty and improving household income through empowering women economically.
Wannan abu dai da aka gayyace mu za a ba mu shi ba mu tsammance shi ba Allah Ubangiji ya sa da rabon mu aka ɗauke mu muka zo aka mana training ba mu zata za mu samu ba Allah Ubangiji ya ba mu shi muka samu lokacin da muka je aka ba mu kayan nan muna tsoronsa ne ma muna ga ya za mu yi mu sai da shi ne ma.
Those that have been selected, now they are empowered economically. They send their children to schools. They can buy food to eat. They can use clothes as they wish. So I know this project has much importance in our edifice, better than any other intervention we are getting in this state.
Amma a yau da zuwan Women Entrepreneurship Project ya taimake ni wanda a yau ta fannin kuɗi na sun koyar da ni yadda zan iya in ajiye riba na, in ajiye uwar kuɗi na, har yanzu in takura daga cikin riba na in yi ajiya. Wanda gaskiya na ga muhimmanci ya kuma tallafi rayuwa na ta fannoni daban-daban. Nakan ba da taimako ga 'ya'yana wanda suke makaranta ta dalilin zuwansu da kuma koyaswa da aka yi mana. Ni da wannan tallan sola ina bayarwa wani lokaci mai gidana yana ɗan zaga min da shi. Wani lokaci kuma in na gama aikin abinci na ga share-share na wanke-wanke na ina ɗauka ina bin ƙauyuka da har gari ina hawa mota mashin ina zuwa ina ɗan sassai da kayana wani lokaci kuma ina ba a yara na suna ɗan zazzagawa suna sayar min kayana to wani lokaci kuma a gida ma ana zuwa ana nema.
Daga na gane ci gaba sosai. So akwai makubur ko wanda kawai kana sa shi kana dora abunan kana sa gawai kana dora nan da nan kawai zaka ci ko ka sha ruwa mai zafi ko kai abunan.
Solar Sister believes in a brighter world powered by women entrepreneurs, and we do this by providing women with an economic opportunity to distribute clean energy products in their communities across Africa.
Women entrepreneurship abinda suka kawo mana a cikin Bauchi lalle gaskiya su samu mana sana'ar yi.
Solar Sister has a mission of a brighter world powered by women entrepreneurs. And particularly with this web project.
We work in 5 LG in Bauchi State with over 100 communities.
It touches on extreme poverty as well and the ability to provide decent work. So all in all, it's a holistic approach to see how we can improve the lives of people, especially in northeastern Nigeria, an area which has been plagued with insurgency, and we've seen a number of displacements in Nigeria. All right, so with that, I'd like to end the presentation. In Nigeria, we say something, we say we move. So thank you very much. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Olasimba. Wow, that is quite a video. I'm sure we all felt the impact that is created and will continue to be created, and in fact, how massive this project can and will be from what I see. Thank you for sharing that. Our special guest today is Mr. Ashraf Tarsim, Regional Manager, North Africa Energy Infrastructure and Financial Sector. Mr. Ashraf, I pass it over to you.
So congratulations first for all the speakers that presented their success stories. And I think my presentation now will allow to go to the next panel related to policy and regulatory challenges. So I think I will start really by congratulating all these really ground actors with all these initiatives, this innovation, the lives of African people. So thank you again for all these efforts. Thank you also for the organizer for giving us this opportunity to present perspective from African Development Bank. So I will start by saying some words on the African Development Bank, your institution. This is the premier African institution, financial institution, with shareholder from all African countries. So I will go to present, to share my screen. So thank you again for the opportunity for giving me the floor to present the African Development Bank experience and mainly perspective on the new trends for in power sector in Africa. So as I mentioned, I think it's a transition to the next panel. About African Development Bank, as you know all that this is an institution with more than 50 years at the service of development of our African countries. African Development Bank is almost with a footprint in all African countries, with field presence almost except 2 or 3 countries. We are present in all our African countries. As shareholders, we have 81 shareholders, including the all African countries, 54 African countries. At African Development, now the active portfolio, or we are managing around $26 billion of investment with an attractive pricing on competitive pricing thanks to the AAA rating. Myself, I'm managing particularly energy sector operation in six North African countries. In terms of serving Africa, what we are calling high fives. So the 5 development priorities designed by President Adesina at end 2015 when he was elected as president of the African Development Bank for his first mandate. He oriented the bank on 5 key areas. What we call high 5. So we have light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, a third high priority, integrate Africa, and last but not least, the improve quality of life for people of Africa. You agree all with me that these 5 areas going from electrify Africa to improve quality of life are really essential to transform lives of people in Africa. As mentioned, our first priority is related to the energy sector, light up and power Africa. The challenge is huge, simply huge. We have over 640 million people in Africa, and we have seen some videos, particularly in Nigeria, in the rural areas. So without access to energy, almost we are around 30% access of energy in Africa, which is the lowest rate in the world. For this region, and given this Power Africa and Electrify Africa as first priority, we are really implementing a huge investment within Africa, accelerated during the last 10 years. And we have here some figures in terms of investment. $18 billion committed during the last 2 decades. It's mentioned 14 here, but it's in unit of account, our own currency, but it's almost $18 billion. But I think the main 2 features within this slide is, first of all, we are providing 20% of our lending to private sector. And this is increasing in an increasing path since 10 years. When you look at and 19th, and we were around very low investment in private sector, and we are aiming to reach 30% investment to private sector. And the second feature is related to a very pronounced shift to more supporting green energy. So when you look at the right side of the slide, we are moving from coal to, during the last 10 years, to more hydro, solar PV, natural gas, so more focus on renewable and green energy. In terms of the value chain, so as mentioned, more green energy, but also, and this is the main point of the presentation related to policy, we're also devoting more support to enabling environment, because we have seen a lot of private sector involvement, private sector success stories, and we need really to get to this enabling environment to attract more investment, because I mentioned the challenge is huge, and we need an increased private sector involvement within the sector. So more and more focus on reforms. As we seen, we use it to expand around 10% of our more focus as well on the integration among African countries to create more greater markets, so more focus on interconnection. So this is the way that we are considering so far. In terms of how implementing all this, how we are implementing this this agenda of empower and electrify Africa, the strategy is focusing on 7 priorities. So going from the setting up the right enabling environment, passing through enhancing capabilities of our utilities, increasing the number of bankable projects for access to electricity, like clean cooking, as we have seen in the previous success story descriptions, but also more and more regional projects, and to increase regional integration within this 54 fragmented market in Africa. The main goal is to, which is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, is to reach universal access. SDG number 7, and for that we all agree that we are in face of a huge challenge. We are estimating the need between 60 and 90 billion dollars by year to reach this objective in terms of investment. We are fully committed to invest significant part of our own resources on the energy sector, but on catalytic project that will be able to also attract private investment, because we are fully conscious, we fully agree that we cannot without partnerships, and we cannot do it in isolation. So now, if we move to reforms and the track record of African countries in terms of reforms during the last 20 years, we have mentioned that the enabling environment is key to enhance project bankability, to attract private sector investment, to fill into this 60 to 90 billion US dollars gap in terms of investment, to reach universal access for the next 10 years. So since 2016, so when we had this new priority and more focus on energy sector, we worked very hardly to effect reforms and catalyze investment into the energy sector through what we call policy-based operations. So we provide loans to government, but and we request that they implement reforms, particularly in the energy sector, but also another type of support like technical assistance, capacity building, as well as knowledge product. In terms of reform, so when we look at the track record during the last 20 years, I think important reforms were implemented to restructure power utilities, to improve governance, and to attract private investment. We have highlighted all these reforms in recently published to have a look on it, revisiting the reforms in power sector in Africa, so released in 2019 as African Development Bank publication, and it comes with a very deep analysis on all these reforms with country by country cases. When we look broadly at all these reforms during the 20 years, what the key trends are the following. So number one is the most reforms were about separating the main sector function, policy making from regulation, from service provision. One major structural reform was to go through the vertical and horizontal unbundling of national utilities. It was intended to be the stepping stones for greater competition, for more private sector participation in power sector, but we can consider that the results are quite mitigated among countries because we don't have a single country that have gone further that into the end of this kind of reform. It was more about opening to independent power producer, so IPPs, and not much rather than that. So as I mentioned, I think all details of this analysis of reforms are within the publication that I put here in the bottom of the slide. But let's summarize that by saying that yes, during the last years in Africa, we are seeing that we have concession, we have IPPs in more than 30 countries to generate electricity. At least we have more than 27 gigawatt in terms of new capacity, which are a really good achievement, but not yet enough to reach the fixed objective. Also, at the same time, mitigated results related to very, very few number of financially viable utilities, which remain one of the biggest challenge. High tariffs, low electricity access growth rate. So when we look at the historical level of growth rate, still very mitigated and not as we are expecting to reach objectives. Also some exponential increase in the depth of within the sector. Now, in terms of these reforms, one of the most common reform that has been implemented within almost all countries is the establishment of the regulator. So creating regulator was probably because of the ease of implementing it. But the question is, yes, we have a regulator, but what about its effectiveness and its impact on the improvement of performance of the sector? So we know all that regulators have an important role in terms of defining magnitude of subsidies to reflect costs, to ensure that cost reflective tariffs, but also in terms of licensing and so on. The bank has produced, which is also mentioned in the bottom, since 2018, a yearly flagship publication, which is the Electricity Regulatory Index. Here we have some flavor from the 2020 ERI, so the Electricity Regulatory Index, mentioning that 43 out of 54 countries have now their own regulators. What is the here? It's a map about the results of 2019 Electricity Regulatory Index. 2020 will be launched very soon, early November, at the Africa Energy Forum. So you will have the results of 2020 in November. But what we can say is, I think the top performing countries in terms of effectiveness of regulation are Uganda, Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, and Zambia, which still at the top of the countries in Africa. But almost what we can consider for the regulatory aspect of regulating the energy sector is the common reform is establishment of regulator. So we have, yes, regulators, but with limited capabilities. And if you go through the ERI report, there is, I think, three dimensions to be considered to have this this index, the governance index. The regulatory substance means that our regulator really implementing fully their mandate, and also the outcome. So the outcome is trying to capture the degree of effectiveness of regulatory actions. We cannot speak about regulation and power sector within this period of COVID-19 pandemic, given this situation. The ERI, the Electricity Regulatory Index 2020, will also have quite strong analysis on the impact of COVID-19 on the sector. If we go through this channel of impact quickly, we can consider, first of all, COVID-19 has changed our modes of work. Very simple example, trips for controls and audit in the field for regulators, or visits on site for operators are were cancelled. There is also what we have seen that through the questionnaires that we send to all stakeholders in the energy sector when we are preparing the ERI 2020 is that there is a shift in the demand among consumers categories. So electricity consumed in the industrial and commercial sector was reduced because of the lockdown inactivity, but consumed in the residential sector has increased. But as you know, I think mainly 90% of the countries of Africa, there is quite of cross subsidies between the two categories. So when your revenues are decreasing in the commercial industrial, you will have lower revenue to cover low tariff in the consumer and residential side. So this is something considered as a big challenge. But also in terms of revenue, so when we look at all the reforms, ongoing reforms of implementing tariff adjustment, which is very important for the utilities, but also for the private sector involvement to have an adequate tariff, we have seen that all governments have pushed for later postponed reforms related to tariff to reduce impact of COVID on population. So increase in tariff was postponed for later, and all these reforms scheduled were delayed. But also in terms of revenue collection, so I think all the government have also decided to avoid consumer disconnection during the lockdown when they didn't pay. So in terms of revenue collection, we know that it's already a huge challenge in Africa in terms of revenue collection, but within the pandemic situation, this situation was quite more challenging. Now, I think we spoke about regulatory reforms. I presented to you the main feature, but here the slide is mainly about about the financial situation of utilities. I think all of us know that the last one related to the future and the next wave of sector reform. I think since we are going to the next panel related to reforms and policy, it's important to mention that within the publication that we have released in 2019, we have come to the conclusion that the prescriptive approach of the standard model of reforming electricity has not been so fruitful for power sector in Africa. So no single African country has really adopted word for word what we call the standard model. Facing the future, we need more proactive policy, regulatory, and institutional reform. Yes, this reform have to be flexible to respond to uncertain change already occurring, like this pandemic. I'm coming to the end. I think Stephanie is remembering me in terms of timing. So now just to leave on a positive. To live on a positive outlook and optimistic outlook, lessons that we learned is that the importance of creating conducive environment. There is a strong correlation between reforms and sector performance, and yes, we have to adapt ourselves to these new trends related to digitalization, to blockchain application, as well as this new trend also of consumers being a producer of electricity with net metering. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm happy to engage with you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashram Tarsin, once again, Regional Manager, North Africa Energy Infrastructure from the African Development Bank. Thank you for that. I'm sure there will be quite a number of people who would be looking forward to engage and to reach out. We appreciate you for coming in. Thank you.